shower down upon us the light of our soul source in all the ways by which we define ourselves.
May the sparks of your
Works of your holy servants, through whom you have revealed these words to the world, shine and sparkle. May their merit, their ancestors' merit,
the merit
of their innocence and their holiness stand for us so as to prevent us from stumbling when we study these words.
their merit,
Their merit, may our eyes be illumined by what we study, as in the saying of the sweet singer of Israel, open my eyes that I may gaze into wonders of your Torah. May the words of my mouth and the thoughts of my heart be acceptable to you, my rock and my redeemer. For it is the eternal who grants wisdom. It is from his mouth that knowledge and understanding issue forth.
na 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 na. So we are continuing with the discussion of Jacob's taking the blessings from Isaac and away from Esav. And I think we got through to the end of 296, through the end of that page. And we're on 297. So he succeeds. The last point that was made on 296 was that because the contest, so to speak, is between the forces of blessing and the forces of curses, of evil, of deceit. Jacob is truth, and the serpent, who is the ultimate source of Esav's strength. The serpent is the deceiver, the wily one, the one who represents lies. So the paradox, which we've had a number of times, is that in order to combat that evil foe, Jacob needed to outsmart the serpent and outsmart Esav, who was, in a certain sense, the least of his worries, because Esav is in a certain sense a pawn of Samael and of the serpent. So that's where we say we have, therefore Jacob prepared himself cunningly, deceitfully. I want to just maybe just again touch on a point that we've touched on a few times in that last paragraph on 296. No, why don't we just read it one more time straight through? So who's going to do us the favor, the honor? Beryl, I'm telling you, you've been waiting for me. Go. When's he going to stop talking and ask me to raise my hand? Right? That's what you've been thinking the whole time. I know. Okay, good. So Yeshiko. Therefore, Jacob.
Therefore, Jacob prepared himself cunningly, deceitfully, bringing blessings upon himself who resembled Adam. Blessings snatched from that serpent of lying lips who told so many lies, perpetrated so many insidious acts to lead astray, inflicting curses upon the world. So Jacob came cunningly, deceiving his father in order to bring blessings, seizing from him what he had denied the world. This was measure for measure. Of him is written, he loved cursing, may it come upon him. He did not want blessing, may it be far from him. Of him is written, cursed are you among all animals and among all beasts of the field. He remained so for generations upon generations, while Jacob came and snatched blessings from him. Ever since the days of Adam, Jacob was destined to seize all these blessings from the serpent, leaving
from that serpent. That primordial
Jacob
mythic
was destined to seize all these blessings from that serpent, leaving him immersed in curses, unable to escape.
So with that last point, again, we have a summary of things that we've had before. Had Jacob not succeeded in getting the blessings would have fallen into the serpent's lap, so to speak, and would have strengthened and empowered the serpent in immeasurable ways. So we've talked about that again and again. But I want to just sharpen that point a little bit by reading a couple of the phrases here. So Jacob has to be shrewd. Jacob has to be deceptive. You fight deceivers by being deceptive. That's part of the takeaway here. But who did Jacob wrest the blessings from? So the ending of the sentence of the paragraph and much of the paragraph, is clearly with the verses that are being brought up. He snatched the blessings from him, destined to seize all these blessings from that serpent. Right? So he takes it away from the evil one. That's the serpent. And yet, in the middle of the paragraph, we have what happened in real life, not in the ultimate mythic significance of what happened, but in the real, actual unfolding within the world. So Jacob came cunningly, deceiving his father in order to bring blessings, seizing from him what he had denied the world. So if you look at 276, right? So Danny Matt tries to point out, what does he say in 276? Barry, you got it?
Seizing from him, seizing from the serpent, now manifesting in Esav.
Right. So he takes the second part of this sentence and he brings it back into the simpler way of understanding it. Esav was going to get the blessing. He snatched it right out of Esav's hands, right? And as a result, Esav, who is the team player of the serpents, he takes it away from the serpent. But the beginning of that sentence is very, straightforward. He seized the blessings, deceiving his father. He took the blessings from his father. So we have this very uncomfortable, for me, when you read it this way, you have this uncomfortable juxtaposition that who's holding on to the blessings after all? Isaac needed to be deceived in order to deceive the serpent. Right? So, as I said, we've touched on this many, many times already. It's a tight kind of, a constricting thought. So it makes you uncomfortable. But there is Isaac, who's is not just in this sentence juxtaposed, but he's on the left, and right next to him on the other side of the hedge is the serpent. Right? They are the neighbors, and Isaac has, as we've said before, Isaac has an affinity to Esav. Isaac has a connection to Esav. So to be able to make Isaac give the blessings where they really should go to Jacob, he also has to be outsmarted. He also has to be deceived. So this is part of this, as I said many times already, this placing the problem in a very, as I say, uncomfortable way, placing it very, very much within the divine itself, and not only as some kind of fight between God as good and Satan and serpent as bad. Right? There's a struggle within God. All right. Any comments? All right. That's it. We keep going. 297.
Inspired by the Holy Spirit, David said, "What will be given to you? What will you gain, O deceitful tongue? What does that evil serpent care about inflicting curses upon the world? As they have said, a serpent bites and kills and feels no satisfaction."
Okay, so just I think I pointed it out as well last time when we got that verse mentioned before, that ma yiten lecha u'ma yosif lecha lashon remiyah. What will be given to you? It's actually should be really written as, what will he give you? Right? So it's translated here, what will be given, but it's ma yiten lecha, and that echoes, of course, the blessing. The blessing is v'yitein lecha Elokim mital hashamayim u'mishmanei haaretz v'rov dagan v'tirosh. The v'yitein lecha, God will give you in blessing. What will he give you, deceitful tongue? Nothing, right? So the echo back to the blessing to Jacob is found in this psalm. And this is David kind of taunting the serpent and calling the serpent the deceitful one who has brought so much, curses, so many curses onto the world, right? And then we have this saying. It's a kind of a folk saying, and it's found also in rabbinic literature, that what's really disgusting about the serpent is the gratuitousness of the serpent's evil, right? The serpent bites and kills and gets no benefit from it, right? I have no idea whether anatomically, zoologically, or whatever it is, that's actually correct. But in terms of this, the saying, it would be one thing if the serpent actually, enjoyed eating what they bite into, but they don't. They just bite and they throw poison into the thing that they bite, and that's it. They don't get any benefit. They have any enjoyment. It's not about things tasting good. If you can't resist something that tastes good, no mela, there's something to understand. But this is totally uncalled for. This is pure evil for evil's sake. That's how that folk saying tries to present the serpent. So okay, and now we go through a little bit of the phrases from that verse.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
Could you refresh my memory, please? How is it a foregone conclusion? I mean, Esau and Jacob are brothers. So how is it a foregone conclusion that the blessing should have gone to Jacob?
Retrospectively, it's a foregone conclusion.
I understand.
Right? That's what you have to say. You have to say that this is, as you read over the whole unfolding of the story, we have one of two choices. Either we choose to read this as this is the way it had to be, and then we can read backwards into the story and say, oh, look at how Esau, messed up over here. Look at how Esau is portrayed negatively over here. Look at what he wanted to do later. That shows. That's the basic way that we've adopted. The other way, though, would be to then read this whole story against the story itself, and say, you know what, we have a sacred scripture which basically celebrates our wrongdoing, and you can't accept that as the sacred scripture under those terms. So and look, that's where Isaac was. Isaac was in your question. For Isaac, it wasn't at all clear that Esau shouldn't get the blessing.
And Rivka also.
No, Rivka was very clear that Esau.
Oh, yeah.
That's the whole point, and that's why, right. And that's how we read Rivka as this heroine, right? Yeah. Rivka, and she is presented as a heroine. It's not like the story does give us these little things. Rivka is the generous one, at the well. She's a perfect, helpmeet for Isaac. She's just like Sarah. So these are the clues or the pieces of evidence that mount up to finally convince us that this is so. But it's true. In the Torah itself, there is no, at this point. Later, it's clarified again and again and again. But at this point, as the story is happening in real time, there's nothing that really condemns Esau to being a murderer or a liar or corrupt or anything like that. There's nothing in the story at all like that. Correct.
Except that Rivka was explicitly told when she was in that miserable childbearing phase that the elder will serve the younger.
That's it's not explicit at all. But what she's, it's an oracle, and it's actually ambiguous. You could read it both ways. You could read it Varav Yavot Sa'ir could be read as the elder one, the bigger one, will serve the younger one. So that means Esav should serve Yaakov, right? Or you could read it as Verav Yavot Sa'ir, that the elder one will be served by the younger one. Those three words can be read either way. That's the beauty of oracles. They're always afterwards right, because they're always ambiguous enough to be able to to withstand whatever the evidence that can be marshaled later. Yes, that's part of the drama. Part of the drama is that this is not so clear, that this is a struggle where Rivka has to take a stand against her own beloved husband. Yeah, I mean, in human terms, forget about the Zohar and all the the mythic divine struggles that are going on. This is a super dramatic story about people making very, very, very hard choices. Yeah. Harry.
I think that the Zohar is suggesting a third option, a third possibility in the previous paragraph when it cites the Psalm 109. It in effect saying that the that a bracha is, so as to speak, wasted upon the evil one, because there are people who really don't want a bracha. They hate it. They actually really want a curse. So that if the blessing were bestowed upon Isaac, in effect, there'd be no blessing. Not Isaac. I mean Esav. There'd be no blessing. The blessing would be wasted, and that's an interesting possibility too.
Right. So in kind of an abstract way, I think that's really part of what is being. Wait a second. Part of being what's said by the psalm, and in that sense, that's part of the story. If you want to push it, when Esav sells his birthright for a bowl of porridge, whatever it is, soup. He doesn't value this blessing, although birthright, strictly speaking, should be separated from blessing, but he doesn't really get it. And that's part of what we have here with the serpent. Serpent bites, but doesn't even know what enjoyment is. It's not for any benefit. It's just for the heck of causing chaos and destruction. And I think that's a phenomenon that's real in the world. To enjoy destruction is a horribly terrifying phenomenon that's out there. But we have to be careful also. We have to be careful about how we apply that. In a mythic, theoretical way, I think that's really part of what fits into the picture. That's part of what evil is. Evil is gratuitous evil. Evil is not being tempted by something that you think actually would be good, and you do something bad to get the good thing. I mean, it's bad, but that's not pure evil. Pure evil is exactly like you say. Pure evil is the antithesis of blessing. And any blessing that would be coming to the evil one, to the Sitra Achra, would be wasted. But it wouldn't quite be wasted. It would be empowering. Because blessing means energy, blessing means divine flow, the blessing means life-giving forces. So, the life that could be for beautiful things, for constructive purposes, for goodness, all of that life will be wasted on this, this terrible evil force. But it's tricky. For some reason, I remembered a very painful episode that happened in my life. When we were young, Zelda and I decided to make Aliyah. And we left for Israel, and we had all kinds of stuff. We had an apartment on Lower East Side, and we didn't know what we were doing. I had all my Sfarim, and I had my Shas, which I had inherited from my grandfather. So, and it's big, it's like it's big volumes. Here, See, I can't even get it out. See, it's big. Each volume, so it's 20 of these huge volumes. So we decided not to take it to Israel when we went, and we would see how things went. And then eventually, when we settled down, we would ship all of our stuff. So unfortunately, didn't work out that way. And I lost many, many, many of my Sfarim, but the Shas, among a few other Sfarim, was thrown out on the street, and it was picked up, thankfully, by people who then took it to the shul across the street. And the shul across the street took the Shas and a bunch of other Sfarim, and they put it into their library. So when I came back, sometime later, I wanted to retrieve my Sfarim, and they had all been lost. And then I heard that they were in the shul. So I went to the shul, and I went to the Rav of the shul. And it was a shul that when I lived down there, before we left, made Aliyah. This was on the Lower East Side. I used to daven there. So I went to the Rav of the shul, and I said, look, this is terrible. I'm so happy that you were able to save my Sfarim. My Shas is so precious to me. Can you please give it back to me? And he said, what do you need it for? It'll do so much more good here, right? It would be a waste for you to have this bracha. Let the bracha stay with the people who can benefit from the bracha. So when you said those words that you said, that's what actually jumped up in my mind. So how we use these ideas is tricky, and I had to beg and cry, and finally I got the Shas, but none of the other Sfarim.
Is this Rabbi Singer?
It's none of your business. So anyway,
I have stories too.
Doesn't matter.
Rabbi?
That's not the point of the story. Yeah, who said that?
Rich.
All right. Yeah, Rich. Hi, Rich. Good to
Hi.
see your name.
So what's striking to me in this segment is how the evil side seems to have just sucked all the oxygen out of this whole saga, and there's just nothing left for any of the characters, regardless of how worthy they are, to live in something other than an evil element. Am I missing something, or?
Well, I think that the point is at this point that there's a conflict here, a life and death conflict with evil. So at this point, all other things are irrelevant, but it's for the sake of going forward. But yes, at this particular moment, this is what's at stake. This is, winner take all. Either evil will triumph forever with no hope of ever being defeated, or something more complicated will happen. And that's, of course, we've already had a little bit, and that's going to be the point of the next page or two of the Zohar, because we clutched blessing from the jaws of defeat, but on the other hand, the world is a messy world, isn't it? So there's a lot of stuff going on, despite the fact that Jacob was able to salvage or save the blessing from the jaws of the serpent. But yes, at this particular moment, this is what it's about. This is it, and nothing else can compete. Does that respond to what you're saying?
I guess somewhat, but I guess I'm not seeing this as an isolated incident in where we've been over the years.
Say more.
I don't know. It just seems like we're spending more time discussing aspects of the evil than of the other side.
Well,
Sometimes more sharply than others, but
so if you're looking for places where the Zohar will teach you how to live a blissful life, there are such places.
oh, I agree,
But yes, but right now this is the job of the Zohar, is to explicate this biblical story, which is about the blessing versus the curse. Yes, that's exactly what this is. That's where we are. Correct.
okay.
That's where we are. All right. So, okay, so we read the first paragraph. We're up to the second paragraph.
O deceitful tongue, for he deceived Adam and his wife, bringing evil upon him and upon the entire world. Later, Jacob came and took back all those blessings. A warrior's sharp arrows, Esav.
Right, these are all phrases within the verses that are in the Psalm.
Esav, who threatened Jacob on account of those blessings, as is said. Esav held a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing.
Okay, so that's the sharp arrows. The warrior is Esav, and they need and Jacob had to be protected from Esav's bearing a grudge that Jacob got the blessing rather than he himself. Okay, just one little point on the previous paragraph, a kind of a historical gloss, that the curses brought upon the earth, right, are prevalent until Jacob wrests the blessing away from Esau. Right, so it was an ongoing dismal situation, and it took Jacob so many generations after Adam to try to restore the hope of blessing suffusing the world. But there's a fight. All right, so now we are taking the phrases of the blessing itself, right? These are the words of the blessing that Isaac bestowed upon Jacob, right? So it's starting from, may God give you, okay? So that's the first verse of the blessing. And here we start unpacking it. Go ahead, may God.
May God give you the dew of heaven and the fat of the earth, from above and below, in a single bond.
Okay, so this is now going to be one of the motifs that we're going to work on again and again. Heaven and earth. Blessings from above, blessings from below. Okay, how is that going to work out? We'll see.
Abundance of grain and new wine. This has been established, but as is written, I have never seen a righteous man forsaken or his seed begging bread. Come and see, I have been Na'ar, young, and now I am old. They have established. This verse was uttered by the Prince of the world. Therefore he said, abundance of grain and new wine.
Okay. So abundance of grain, not just enough grain, but more and more and more grain, and also really fresh, delicious wine are being bestowed upon you. And the Zohar says, okay, what does this really mean, right? What is this really about? It's been established, there have been midrashim, the rabbis talk about it, but what is it really saying? So they bring in a pasuk that we have in our traditional Birkat Hamazon, the long version, right? Where one way of singing it is Na'ar hayiti gam zakanti velo ra'iti tzadik neza bezaro mevakesh lachem Hashem oschem. And you know, the last verse is a different verse. May God, coming from someplace else, may God give his people strength and bless his people with peace. But that's a different verse. But this is Nar hayiti gam zakanti. I was a youth, and then I got older, right? I aged. Velo ra'iti tzadik ne'ezah bezaro mevakesh lachem. And this is how to translate this is a big question, right? And I have not seen a righteous person left alone, abandoned, and his children, his seed, bezaro mevakesh lachem, having to seek out bread. So, first of all, before we get to what the Zohar says this verse has to do with where we are, just a question to all of us. It's a classic question. If we recite that verse, and some people don't refuse to recite it actually. If we recite this verse, we have a problem, right? We have a reality check, fact checking. We have a fact checking problem, right? How can you claim that all through your life, from your youth to your old age, you have never seen a good person abandoned and his children poor and starving? Baloney. Unfortunately, we see it all the time. So the verse is fake news. It's counterfactual. So some people actually refuse to say this verse. It's Lashon Remiyah. It's deceitful. It's a deceitful tongue. It's saying a lie. So there's a lot of work that people do to try to figure out how could this be said? How could David say it in the Psalms, and mean it when it flies in the face of everything we know. So does anybody have a suggestion, to a contribution to how do we say this? How do we read this verse? Larry.
Well, my son taught me that the problem with it is, he said, the problem is you were young and you were old and you never saw it. That's the problem. That, in other words, it's not that it's not true, it's that you didn't see it. That's the problem.
Uh-huh. So, okay, so that's a good shtoch. It's a good, it's a good, sticking it to the person. However, the meaning in the Psalm is to celebrate. The meaning is that this is something positive. So, is David completely oblivious and he really doesn't see these things? If that's the case, then you got a problem, like your son says. So it's always good to listen to our sons and our children when they have these kinds of really good ideals to remind us of. So good, Yesher Koach, you're a fortunate man. So Len, you wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's kind of metaphorical. Hold on. Okay. It's metaphorical speech. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's metaphorical speech. It's that the tzaddik, that he's never, even in his own faith in
you're freezing. You're breaking up. I didn't hear. Start it again. You keep on freezing.
Metaphorical speech. It says my internet connection is unstable, so I don't know if you're going to hear me, but it doesn't mean it literally, but rather metaphorically, that the tzaddik, living an ethical life, a godly life, a life of being close to Hashem, is not abandoned, is not alone. He has that connection. And as far as his children, it's not literally that they don't have to look for bread, but the influence of such a person on their children is forever, and they are always sustained by that. So it's not literal.
Right. Okay. So that's an acceptable way that we've resolved difficulties like that in many places. Okay. Anybody else? All right, so I remember hearing from an old Rav many years ago, who said that he said this to Rav Kook, and the Rav Kook said it was a good pshat. Whether it is or it isn't, I don't know. He said when it says lo ra'iti, which means I never saw, he says the word ra'iti is often, I understand, I see things. Oh, I see what you mean. So he said that it meant I could never understand how we let people who are righteous be abandoned and their children scrounging for bread, right? I could never get it. I could never see it. So that's one pshat that I've heard. The other simple reading is that there's something implied by the verse, and it's the opposite of the implication that Larry's son made, which is from the time I was young till the time I was old, I never saw a righteous person abandoned or their children destitute, and I didn't do something. The opposite. I never saw it and didn't respond. I never let it go, right? I never was oblivious to it, but I always had to respond when those kinds of problems in the real world happen. We need to respond. I saw that Rabbi Sachs in his Siddur quotes that answer, and he makes a nice point. He says, and that's the way we end the benching. We start the benching, God, we thank you for all of the good that you have given us. And now, as we learn from you and we are obligated to imitate you, when we go out and we see people who are in need, we will never turn our eyes away from somebody. When we see somebody who is abandoned, we will step up and we will be the ones to nourish and to support them and their families. So, and thank God, Shomrei has a good commitment to that. It's a very wonderful aspect of the life of our community. So, so those are all the pshat kinds of ways of getting out of these problems. Here, the Zohar offers another answer. And if you read 285. Beryl, where are you?
I'm finding it. I'm on the wrong page, of course.
You turned the page too fast. 297, the bottom of the
I
page.
should have known better.
Yep.
Therefore he said, abundance of grain and new wine. Isaac's blessing refers to the rich flow of emanation conveyed by Yesod. The abundance of grain corresponds to the bread mentioned by metronome.
Metatron. So that's in the previous notes. That's where we have the Na'ar. The Na'ar is Metatron. The Na'ar is a subordinate of God. But the tzaddik, lo ra'iti tzaddik ne'azav, the tzaddik is Yesod. So the tzaddik is not any human righteous person who may or may not suffer, deprivation and abandonment. That happens in the real world. But the real tzaddik is within God's array of aspects of life. The righteous is constantly being replenished and is never abandoned, is never cut off from the flow of divine giving, right? Then, of course, the question is, what happens down in the real world? No, that's not as guaranteed. So here, what we have is that if we read this paragraph one more time, we have that the abundance of grain and new wine, this has been established. You got it? 297, the last paragraph.
Abundance of grain and new wine. This has been established. But as is written, I have never seen a righteous man forsaken or his seed begging bread. Come and see. I have been Na'ar, young, and now I am old. They have established. This verse was uttered by the Prince of the world. Therefore he said, abundance of grain and new wine.
Right, so Na'ar Hayiti is said by the Na'ar. The Na'ar is the Prince of the world. The Prince of the world is the greatest angelic being that there is. That's Metatron. And Metatron is this mysterious liminal figure between the divine realm and the angelic realm. So he's the greatest of all angels, up to the point where he, in many ways, can be seen as a kind of divine emanation. The Talmud talks about Elisha ben Avuya being mistaken and thinking that Metatron, he sees Metatron and he says, oh, there are two gods. There's God and there's Metatron. So there are two gods. So he breaks the monotheism of Judaism, and that's his heresy. So we have this very, very challenging situation where we have this myth of this kind of demiurge, this subsidiary divine being who we keep on struggling to keep within the monotheistic purview. But that's the Nar. The Nar is Metatron, and Metatron says, I watch how all through time, I watch how things are going with the divine, and the divine is constantly flowing with energy. The divine is constantly full of life, never stopping, never disappointing, right? Always throwing out the life and the sustenance that each of us depends upon. Of course, whether we get it or not is another story. Okay, so now that's exactly what Yaakov is blessed with. That Yaakov should be always drenched with this and supported by this kind of abundant, never-ending flow of goodness. All right, now, Beryl, you can turn the page.
May people serve you. When Solomon resigned in Jerusalem.
Reigned, he didn't resign.
Sorry. When Solomon reigned in Jerusalem, as is written, all the kings of the earth brought their presents. And nations bow down to you when King Messiah arrives, as is written, all kings will bow down to him. Rabbi Yehuda said,
I think that's a typo. Yeah, I think it should be bow, not bound.
Okay. Rabbi Yehuda said, all this applies to when King Messiah arrives, as is written, all kings will bow down to him, all nations will serve him.
Okay, so this is now, we're getting into an issue that will go back and forth in the Zohar a little bit, and that is, where and when do these blessings manifest? If Isaac gave these blessings, and these blessings are not just wishful thinking, and they're not just expressions of fatherly love, but they really are meaningful blessings. They seem to be descriptive and even predictive of Jacob establishing himself, not just with a good life, but also being powerful and being served, even worshipped maybe, by others. So peoples will serve you, and kings will come and bring you gifts. So where is this? Again, a reality check question. When does this actually take place? So the Zohar first has a suggestion that it took place. The blessing came true. When did it come true? In that golden era of King Solomon's reign, right? That is this kind of like brief shining moment, so to speak, where everything is going perfectly, beautifully. The Beis Hamikdash is built, the temple, it's luxurious, it's lavish. King Solomon has alliances with all the local kings. There's peace in the kingdom. It's all, a fairy tale, wonderful situation. So this is when all of these blessings came to be. That's the first suggestion. And then nations all will bow down to you. When will that be? And then it'll come true again in the times of the Messiah. When we finally get to the Messianic period, then all of these blessings will fully come to fruition. That's the first suggestion. What does Rabbi Yehuda say? Right, the third paragraph.
Rabbi Yehuda said, all this applies to when King Messiah arrives.
So what's he saying? He's disagreeing with the previous two paragraphs.
As is written.
No. We don't need it, the rest of it. We don't need the verse. We got the point, I hope. That I'm trying to point out the point. The point is, Rabbi Yehuda says these blessings never came true. Not in the time of Solomon and not any other time. These blessings that Isaac bestowed upon Jacob are still waiting to come true. And they will only come true in the time of Mashiach. The time when we were at our land, at the time of King David, the time of King Solomon, it could have been, it was like almost, but no cigar. It didn't come true. And these blessings have to mean something. And therefore, we can only hope that they will come true when Mashiach comes. And all of Jewish history is waiting for these blessings to come true. Yeah, Larry.
Well, it's like when God promised Abraham that his descendants would be like the stars in the sky or the sand on the sea, that you couldn't count them. But actually, there's very few of us. There's like 15 million in the whole world, a world of 6 billion people.
You try counting 15 million.
In other words, it's not, there's not that many Jews. So when did it come to pass? So you could say, well, it will come. In other words, it's going to come. Or another way you could do it is you say, well, if you count us vertically from the beginning to now, there's a lot of us, there's more of us.
Or if you count our opinions. Right, so then it's even more of us. So yeah, no, you're right. This is the way some people have tried to, make those promises meaningful. And that's what we have here as well. We have here in the Zohar, are these blessings playing out in real time, or do we have to wait and be patient? And again, if we couple this with what we read on the previous page, we have a long waiting game here with certain kinds of moments of jiggling. Adam is living in paradise, and then Adam and Eve blow it and are expelled, and the curses begin. Jacob comes to the fore, and Jacob saves the blessings from being lost forever. But again, remember that until he comes, the world is under mostly the dominion of the curses, of evil. So that's generations upon generations upon generations, right? That's years and years and years. So Jacob wins. He wrests the blessings out of the clutches of the Sitra Achra. But still, it's only a partial victory. It doesn't end the game. It doesn't solve the problem. Back to that, tzaddik nezah, about the righteous person that's abandoned. That question in the verse is a continual question. We keep on having to solve that problem, either practically or exegetically or metaphorically, We keep on having to solve that problem because it doesn't go away. We haven't solved the problem. And that's the question. And so what's going on with these blessings? These blessings are hovering and hovering and hovering and hovering, and they never land. And this is what Rabbi Yehuda says. Yes, accept the idea that we live in a world that the blessings have not taken root. They have not taken hold of reality the way they're supposed to, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen until Mashiach comes. Now, the other opinion is it did happen, and then we lost it again. We can get it in this world. If we could get it in the time of Solomon, then theoretically we could get it again. But of course, we have a very strong tradition that says we're not going to keep on getting it and losing it, getting it and losing it. We did that already a couple of times. We had, two temples that we gained and then we lost. There's only going to be a third. It's not going to be that we'll get another temple and then we'll lose it, and then we'll get another temple and then we'll lose it. Mashiach is the end of this game. There's a kind of a time limit on the game. The time limit is when time's up, Mashiach comes and that's it for time. And then, everything gets fulfilled. But it's not going to, it did happen in this world, but the next time it happens, it will be for good. It'll be for keeps. So those are the two opinions that we have here laid out very quickly in the Zohar. And we'll see that this is going to keep on going for a while. Okay.
Okie doke.
Be master.
Be master over your brothers. Heveh. Be not. Heya.
No, be. Heveh. Be master, not heyeh. Right? Which is another way to say be, but it's a different Hebrew way of saying it. Right? Instead of heyeh, the Torah says heveh. What's the difference? Go ahead. Or the Torah could have said tihiyeh. You will be. That would be simple Hebrew. But instead it says heveh, which is a choice that is not the first choice. Just to compare it, when Abraham hears God say, Lech lecha, get moving, then when God says, I'm not going to show you where to go, but the point is, veheyeh bracha, not veheveh, veheyeh bracha, simple Hebrew, be a blessing. So the Zohar here is picking up, what's with the vav? Why isn't it veheyeh? Well, why isn't it tihiyeh? You will be a blessing, or here you will be master over your brothers. What's the veheveh? What's the heveh? Okay. So why is that? Because second line in the middle.
Be or tihiyeh, you will be, because this is a supernal mystery of faith. Since these letters are mysteries of faith, hey above, vav in the middle, then hey last. So he said, Heveh, be master over your brothers, dominating them, subduing them when King David arrives.
Read one more.
Rabbi Yossi said, all this applies to when King Messiah arrives, for since Israel has transgressed the words of Torah, you will tear his yoke from your neck. Okay,
so back to the first paragraph. Just note that we have a similar, just like Rav Yehuda says, no, this is going to apply when Mashiach comes. Rav Yossi says the same thing. All of this is only when Mashiach comes, not in real history. But the paragraph right before that says, oh, heveh, hey, vav, hey. So we should all notice that the four-letter name of God is Yud, hey, vav, hey. Right? The hey, vav, hey are three of the four letters of the four-letter name of God, the God of being, the eternal one. So the Yud for the Zohar applies to the very, very, very tip, the highest tip of divine manifestation, which is unfathomable. We can't talk about it too much. We don't understand anything about it. But then that's the yud, and that's why the yud actually is small, because there's not much that we can grasp of that yud. But the hey, vav hey, signifies the main expansion of God as the God that we can talk about and experience. The first hey is the upper mother, the upper hey. The last hey is the lower mother, the lower hey. And the vav is the conjunction of the two heys together, because vav is the conjunctive letter, right? Vav is and, but it also is 6. So it's the 6 other manifestations of God that flow into the last node of divinity, Shekhinah, that then interacts with the world. So hey, vav hey is the supernal mystery of the union of all of the divine energies together to flow through into reality, right? So when all of those are united, when the hey, the vav, and the hey are fused together in communion, then the flow is unbeatable. Then the flow goes out into the world, and goodness and blessing thrives and is victorious and takes over, right? And then masters all of the other forces that are in the world, the other nations. Israel becomes powerful. Israel is able to exemplify all of the divine wishes for this worldly existence without any interruption, without any obstruction, without any conflict. So that's the possibility that is again bestowed on Jacob. It depends on that union. So it depends on that divine mystery. But it's also a divine mystery when it actually is going to happen. So here we have now a suggestion, going backwards just a little bit more, right? Going backwards to, you will be master over your brothers, to King David. King David was a military success. Remember, Solomon didn't fight any battles. Solomon just enjoyed this time of prosperity and international relations. But King David established it. King David was the one who established the kingdom, the dynasty of King David, which eventually becomes the Messianic dynasty. He's the one who actually is victorious in battle, right? Right? Saul only vanquished thousands, but David vanquished tens of thousands. So that's the idea of being master over your brothers. So it came true at that point. And then comes Rabbi Yossi and says, baloney. It never came true. It will only come true in Mashiach Zeiten, in the times of the Messiah. When the Messiah arrives, that's when there will be peace. And as the Maimonides says, what is the Messiah's time so desperately yearned for? So, Ein bein Yemot Mashiach v'olam hazeh ela shibud malchuyot bilvad. The whole difference between Messianic times and the world as we know it now is whether there would be oppression, subjugation to the nations of the world. So sovereignty and freedom for the Jewish people to be the Jewish people in all their glory, that's what's vouchsafed from in the times of the Messiah. That's when we will be masters over our brothers, so that they will not be able to get in our way, not be able to stop us and impede us. Comes Rabbi Yossi and says, none of this has ever happened fully. We have to wait for the Mashiach. Okay.
May God give you, Rabbi Yossi said, All these blessings derived from the side of Jacob's share, though he took his own. Isaac wanted to bestow these blessings upon Esav, so the Blessed Holy One brought it about that Jacob obtained what was his. Come and see.
Okay, so here we have just again a kind of a summary statement that V'yitein lecha Elokim, that God is giving to you what is rightfully yours. Right? This is Jacob's rightful share, right? And that's what blessing is all about. And that God had to intervene, so to speak, with Isaac, who was about to throw away the blessings, was about to completely destroy the possibility of blessing by giving it over to Esav. So now let's see what we have here. Come and
see. When that serpent inflicted curses upon the world, and the earth was cursed, what is written? To Adam he said, since you listened to the voice of your wife, cursed is the ground because of you, not yielding fruit or verdure fittingly. Conversely, and of the fat of the earth.
Okay, so now what the Zohar is going to do a little bit is put side by side the curses that God utters to the first couple and to the serpent when we have the first sin and in the Garden of Eden. So God's wrath is pronounced against them, and then we take that wrathful pronouncement of curses, and now we put it against Isaac's pronouncement of blessings. And what we have here is literally, and of course conceptually, as we've sort of said it already, but here it comes to a point, this is the reversal of the curses. All of those curses that God first uttered when God was angry with Adam and Eve and the serpent, those curses are at play and are affecting life from one generation to the next. And then Jacob's accepting the blessings, those blessings are a tikkun. They are a repair. They're a reversal of all of those curses. Let's read, Beryl, please read 295.
Conversely, and of the fat of the earth, the curse inflicted on the earth because of Adam's sin is now transformed into blessing. Adam listened to Eve's voice, while Jacob listened to Rebekah's voice.
So that's part of the flipping that we have here as well. Because the verse says, since you listen to the voice of your wife, cursed, etc. Right? And now, since Jacob listened to the voice of his mother, blessed. So what do we make out of that parallelism? What do we make out of that twofold listening to to the voice of this woman? Cher chez la femme. What's going on here?
Well, we've already sort of equated Rebecca with Shekhinah, so a source of blessing.
Right. So to know that that voice is the voice of Shekhinah and not the voice of the serpent, that was the problem, right? Chava, Eve, is influenced by the serpent. She's taken over by the serpent. Chava was potentially another Rivka, if we want to go backwards in time and be anachronistic. Chava was also a potential Shekhinah, but she gets abducted, so to speak, by the serpent. So this is one of the tricky problems, again, that we always have to struggle with in life. When we hear a powerful voice that seems compelling, where is it coming from? Is it coming from this side, or is it coming from that side? Is it a voice of blessing, or is it a voice of curse? Now, when Chava says to Adam, here, eat from this apple, it's delicious. There's nothing there to indicate, like David was pointing out before, there's nothing to indicate that Esav is a bad guy. There's nothing to indicate that that's no good, except to remember that injunction that God put out, don't eat it, right? But somehow or other, we're able to, mess with our interpretation, mess with our memory. But the voice is the voice. And of course, that's what Isaac says here also. The hands are the hands of Esav, but the voice, that's the voice of Jacob. Right? What voices, do we end up being convinced by? Right? So here we have the tikkun, where Adam was convinced by this intimate partner, but tragically to go in the wrong direction. Yaakov was convinced, and he could have fought against it. Remember, he could have, he resisted it. He could have said, "This is wrong." He was compelled by the voice of his mother, and it turned out to be okay. So in 2020 hindsight, it's absolutely clear. As it's happening, who knows? Yes, right? God says, listen to your wife, listen to Sarah, your wife. Larry points out when it came to another very difficult situation that we have, in the Torah readings from last week and this week with regard to Hagar and Ishmael. Yeah. Okay, we're going to stop here. And God willing, we'll be able to continue next week, I hope. Okay?
Oh.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sei gesund, everyone.